Hey everybody, welcome to another video. I know it's been a while, the holidays, it gets crazy, Thanksgiving, and now we're going into Christmas and snow, which you can't see because I've got my blind shut and I'm not pointing the camera towards the window. But anyways, up here in Michigan it's snow and it's holiday season, so everything gets hectic. Not that I was producing a lot of videos, but I mean, like I said, just got a lot of distractions, also very busy with work. Anyways, I thought about making a video, and I couldn't think of what I need to do, but it's like I need to make another another video, and I thought, it's perfect, because I was reading a couple of comic books recently, and I thought to myself, this is bugging me. So this is going to be a rant video, and I'll explain. My question is, and I put this on, I asked Google, whether it's Quora, whether it's Reddit, whatever, and I asked questions. And specifically the question, why aren't superheroes, like comic book superheroes, in costume anymore? They are, but it just seems like this is a reoccurring theme that's happening lately. And I'm not gonna go into the argument of like the MCU or the DCU. I'm leaving those aside. That it's irrelevant to this point. I'm talking about comic books, because a lot of people, of course, argue, and they have certain point, although I kind of disagree with it, but I kind of agree with it, that comic book costumes don't translate to live action. Fair enough, but that's not what I'm arguing. So that's not what bothers me. What bothers me is, and to that argument is, people say you can't, in real life, you can't pull off the look of a costume in the comic book. Okay, fine. I'm talking about the comic book. I'm not talking about live action. I'm talking about specifically the comic book, where they're supposed to be able to get away with anything, because you're drawing the stuff, and it's art, and it doesn't have to be realistic. An actor doesn't need to actually wear the costume. There's no real actor in the entire comic book. If you want to draw, whatever. But it seems to me a lot of times, and DC seems to be more of a culprit than Marvel. Although I've been liking DC, and my example I'm going to pull is DC, although I've got my Marvel box up here, and I'll make a point to that in a minute. But you get so many comic books where it's like, okay, I don't mind an issue, I do, but I mean, I'll give an issue a pass. Especially if it's like a side story where it's not, it's leading up to something. But when you go 2, 3, 4 issues and the character is not in costume, I find that problematic. To me, I've got a simple formula that I think in my head is how I like to see comic book characters. This might not be realistic. This might not be how anybody who does comics thinks. But in my head, this is how I think. When I do comic books, when I'm doing my comic books, this is how I think. Is the hero or heroine, whoever the main characters are of the comic book, should be in at least 70% of the pages. So if you've got a 20-page comic book, let's make it easy. We'll say a 75%. So I would say 15 out of those 20 pages better have the main character, the main comic book character, on those pages. And I would say a couple of those pages are fine to be out of costume, meaning, they just got back from wherever, their day job. Maybe they just got back from a date, maybe they just got back from whatever. They go back to their apartment / house, base of operations, secret lair, and they have to get the costume on. Bruce Wayne is in his suit, and then he goes back to the Batcave and, slides down the bat pole and turns into Batman. But I want to see Batman in Batman costume for the majority of those pages. I want to see him fighting criminals. I want to see him doing his detective work, maybe talking to Commissioner Gordon. These are very basic Batman tropes, and this translates to Spider-Man, of course, as well. I'm using those as two big characters, but I want to see 70 to 75% of a 20-page comic featuring the hero. So I get about 5 pages of, like, hey, maybe the villain, a page and a half of the villain, monologuing or talking about his master plan, or maybe he's doing something, and then maybe maybe a page of, like, Commissioner Gordon talking to his daughter, Barbara, and she's not in costume, obviously, because she's with him, but that type of thing, right? But I want to see at least 70%. I'll give 60. Some people say that's too much. 6, but definitely the majority of the pages of a 20-page comic book should feature the comic book character, whether they have their costume on or not. That's right off the bat. But from there, I would say the majority of the time that character is on page or in panel, they should have their costume on. The bulk of the story should revolve around being in costume, out on the prowl, solving crime, busting crime, whatever, and this varies, of course, obviously from different types of characters. Some characters are more, into magic and blah, blah, blah. Some characters are into more whatever they're doing. But I want to see the comic book characters in costume. I want to look at the cover and see the character in costume. And then I want the majority of the book of the character on the pages in costume. Okay, I think I made that point clear. So, like I said, I'm going to use a classic example. And this is an old comic, obviously, but, I've got the poster of Secret Wars #1 up there, and there's #8 with, featured the black Spider-Man costume, which is an iconic costume, but all of those characters, whether it's Captain America, Wolverine, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Iron Man, Hulk, Spider-Man, The Thing, Colossus, She-Hulk. She-Hulk's not really wearing her normal costume, but her costume really is her green skin more so than what she's wearing. So it's just like the Hulk himself. It's not really, he's usually wearing the purple pants, that's fine, but his costume is his, giant mass and being green. And of course, look at it. So look at the box. I've got the box that corresponds to that from the facsimile editions. If you look at where's the cover? There's lots of covers. There's, you've got, Daredevil is a good example. I know this is all the classic comics. This isn't modern comics, but I'm trying to make a point that characters, when you see this stuff, since it's such a visual medium, as also, a book. You basically, you've got these recognizable characters in these recognizable costumes. I don't know if you can see him there. He's not really in the frame, but like Hank, Hawkeye, right? This is what problem with the MCU, and I'm not going to go into the MCU, but the problem with the MCU is the actor, I can't remember what his name is, but he's just a guy. If you took the costume off of Hawkeye, he's just a guy. Wolverine obviously looks a little more, he's more of a caricature when he's got his mask off because of the hair and the sideburns, and used to be smoking a cigar all the time, and of course the claws. But guys like Captain America is too prime example. He's just a blonde-haired big dude. You take off his costume. So I want to see them in costume. When I do comic books, I've noticed every time I've kept the characters out of costume for any length of time, I actually get comments, or I get people asking me saying, "Who is that?" I find that a little absurd, but people will ask me stuff like, "Who is that? I don't know who this is." "Oh, it's this character." Oh, is that what they look like without their costume?" "Yes." Oh, I just thought it was just some random person. Again, that's where it becomes problematic. So I want to use this example because these two comic books in particular, which I've got CBRs of them so we can look at them on the screen. These two comics are the ones that kind of made me have this argument. I had the argument plenty of times before, but this is what kind of rekindled that argument in my head. Let's go to the new Batgirl, the Cassandra Cain Batgirl. People are, who's Cassandra Cain? Exactly. If you were to take Cassandra Cain, which I'll show you an example, if you take Cassandra Cain and you took her Batgirl costume off of her, this isn't Barbara Gordon, by the way, it's gonna be problematic. This is this comic just came out this week. Both these comics I'm going to talk about just came out this week. You've got, and she's on the cover. She's featured on the cover, which is perfect, right? That's what you want to see. And I'm assuming she's going to be in costume in most of the book. And I'm going to show you issue 2, although the issue number 1 was the same way. She was on the cover because it's the number 1 issue, and she was in her costume the entire comic. And I'll show you in this one. So, look at that. She looks great in the. I mean, you know, there's the argument of people with the leather and the not leather and the spandex. I'm not. All that stuff's out the window. I'm not arguing any of that stuff. I'm arguing the character being in costume in the book. And we got page 1 there, right? She's right there. Lady Shiva is behind her, and her costume kind of varies here and there, but she's not. It's not called the Lady Shiva comic. It's called the Batgirl comic. So she's right there, front and center, with her costume. Looks amazing. I love the art. Love the art. Fighting ninjas. What, you know? How can you go wrong? Again, a 2-page spread. I don't know what's going on with that leg over there, but anyways, she's featured in the foreground, jumping at you. You know, you got these smaller panels that break up. You know, her doing her ninja techniques on the ninjas. But again, she's in full mask, in costume, got the cape blowing, blah blah blah. You get the little shiny line to make it look like it's shiny material, whether it's latex or whatever it is. Again, I'm just going to flip kind of through this real quick, because the whole point isn't to really go through this comic book frame by frame, page by page. But also, if you notice what I said earlier, 1, 2, 3. What's a double page? 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got this story that talks about this incident. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to tell you the story either. But we got this firefighters in action, right? Then you get a bad guy shows up, right? Okay. But look at that. Quickly, we're right back to the character in costume on the majority of the page. Again, you know, obviously the focus is on stitching her up. Batgirl's just there. Okay, the first time she ever... this is issue 2, so from issue 1 to issue 2, she's finally flipped up the front of her mask, right? That's the first time she's actually shown part of her face. So this is what I'm saying is good. This is a good example of what I like to see. And you know, again, we got ninjas. You know, there she is again. It isn't until the very end of the comic where here it looks like she's got her mask on there at the last panel. And then I believe she still got it on in this first panel. And then she's got the mask off in the first time we see her face, right? Okay. After 2 issues. Now, I don't know what they're going to do in issue 3, whatever. But my point is that that's a good example. And I like to see that. However, now let's flip over to Birds of Prey. Now, Birds of Prey has been a little wonky with the costumes, you know, for the last 15 so issues, and I have issues with it's part of the story. And again, people say, oh well, hey, it's part of the story that they don't need to be in costume. Okay, fine, if the story's good or if the story warrants it, sure. But I would say most of the time I wouldn't go too heavy into that. I would still feature the character, you know, mainly as costume. And here it is, Birds of Prey. Cassandra Cain's in the Birds of Prey. She's on like a special mission at the point. And again, this is where another example is it leads into, this is her part of her mission. So this, you know, there's a reason why she's not in costume. However, we've got her running around doing the same thing. Same character as the other book. And she's in this, this outfit. Looks like just like some active wear or whatever. And, you know, she's fighting this dog dude. And then we've got, you know, and here we got, now obviously Oracle is Barbara Gordon, but Oracle's not in costume. She's not going to sit there in a Batgirl costume. That's fine. That's the character. If she's being Batgirl, I want to see her in Batgirl costume, the other Batgirl. Luckily, you've got Black Canary in her costume back here. But again, we get into this, and this is fine, like I said, for this specific situation, because it's, you know, there's a reason why she's not in her costume. But the problem is this happens a lot. And especially in Birds of Prey, I mean, until kind of after like a story arc, I mean, luckily Big Barda's back in her costume. you know, some of the other costume characters, I don't know what's also going on with, I'm assuming that's Vixen. I read this comic, but I kind of half paid attention to who was who when it came to like Vixen, and I can't remember what the other girl's name is back there, but they look drastically different. The artist is a different artist from the other books, but the character looks so drastically different. It's a little odd, and also the way they're doing Barda being really thick like that, I don't like that. However, how she's drawn aside, one good thing is she's in costume. And whether it's her red costume, which is, you know, more like a bathing suit, or she's in her full armored costume, she's in costume. Now that girl up there, like I said, that red-haired girl up there with the tattoos on her arm, I'm assuming that's the one girl, and her name escapes me from the previous story arc, but what is that costume? You're showing off your cool arm tattoos, and you got a halter top and a pair of jeans. You know, also, there's certain characters that can pull it off, but by and large, a pair of jeans as a costume element I find to be lazy and not that interesting. So the character, I find she looks lazy and not that interesting. The other girl, which I think is Vixen, she's just wearing basically a version of the costume that all these women are wearing, that Cassandra Cain was wearing. And I don't know, I just find it to be uninteresting. But like I said, I mean, we get, that's a really weird drawing of a Black Canary, but regardless of how they're drawn, at least most of these Birds of Prey characters are in costume. And again, we've got, you know, her out. Cassandra Cain shows up. She's got the what do you call it? The mutagen, the Ninja Turtle mutagen into her, making her feral. But we've got them out of costume. Like I said, I don't mind it for the story, but we're on like issue 15 here, and you've already done one comic where they're barely in costume through like a 6-issue arc, and then it's like, okay, that's fine, but then you're hitting us with another arc, and again, we're putting half the characters in their costume. You're drastically change. The other problem I have is when they drastically change the costume from, I don't mind like saying going like a long period of time, like an era, you know, oh, it's the era of that costume, right? But when it's like 6 issues later, they get a drastic costume change, and then 6 issues later, they get another drastic costume change, or two artists for some reason can't draw like each other, so they wildly take artistic liberties with the costume. I find that all, I mean, I can go on forever, trust me, about consistency of continuity of comics, and how just like, I'm all for giving the artist their their artistic license to kind of run free and be creative, but you gotta stick to a certain, there's certain things of continuity you need to adhere to. And the problem is, when you got one artist doing 6 issues, and they can't keep that artist on that book for whatever reason, and then you switch to another artist for another 6 issues, or maybe even 3 issues, and then back to the other artist, and then they wildly draw the characters different. They wildly put them in different costumes, and this is not a modern issue. I've seen this. I mean, the X-Men, especially during like the 80s, where it's going to the Silvestri stuff, and then you had all these fill-in artists, you know, like Leonardi and stuff, or even Arthur Adams too. They would draw the costumes all different, and I just find it problematic. I'm not a fan of the 90s Jim Lee X-Men. I never have. I mean, I guess I kind of sort of when they came out, but I was just like, I don't like this. But that said, at least I can say that those character costumes are pretty consistent. So, like I said, my argument isn't whether or not costumes are not practical, you know, whether it works in the cinematic universe or works in the comic universe. I'm talking specifically about the comic book universe, where anything should be fair game. And it doesn't matter how absurd the character's costume is, you should be able to pull it off to draw the stuff on the pages however you want to. Like I said, I'd like to see more consistency, but that's not really my argument. I want to see the character featured more in the book and in costume. Maybe the examples I picked weren't the best examples. They're just the ones that, like I said, that came to mind. if I had more time, I'd go through and I'd try to find more examples, and there have been. I just can't recall them at the moment. So if you've got any, if you've got any ones where you see this problem, hit it up in the comments and let me know. You know, if you want to argue the point, that's fine. Argue in the comments. Go, you know, have at the, and you know, tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why my mode of thinking is flawed. It may be. I'm not saying it isn't, but to me, in my mind, this is how I look at the stuff, and I find things to be problematic. And being a comic book artist myself, you know, I have a little bit of a whatever you call it, a skin in the game, I guess is the, I was gonna say pig skin in the game, some football reference, whatever. But anyway, you know, so this is what kind of, you know, I guess I'm passionate about, or what concerns me. And like I said, modern comics seem to be all over the place. They seem to do this a lot, where they just put the characters for long periods of time, where they just sporadic or keep taking the characters out of costume, or not featuring the character in majority of the pages of their own self-titled book. I mean, if it's a team book, and say, you know, Rogue's not in every page, that's fine, because it's not the Rogue comic book, it's the X-Men, right? So you're going to feature other characters. But when it's, especially when it's, you know, a single character, whether it's Wolverine, or whether it's Captain America, whether it's Batman, Batgirl, whatever, you know, that's their book, so they should be the main character, and they should be in the majority of the pages, and the majority of the pages that they're in, they should be in costume. So I'll leave it at that. Like I said, go ahead and go nuts in the comment or whatever. I don't know when the next video is going to be, whenever, you know. Maybe I might think of one tomorrow, maybe I won't think of one until next month, but let's hear what you guys have to say about this situation, and I'll read your comments and let you know, and maybe I'll address them in the next video. But alright, I will catch you later, and see you in the next one. Alright, bye-bye.